and welcome back to Salmon's Pizzeria, your slice of Scottish football. This is our series, The View from the Stands, where we take a little preview look. I guess it's more than a preview now because the season has started, but we can still preview the rest of the season, club by club, with podcast, or tonight, podcasts of that said club. Delighted to say tonight we've got two podcasts. Not Another Rangers podcast and the Gallant Few Podcast. So we'll go around the guests. First off, we've got Scott Kerr from Not Another Rangers podcast. Scott, how are you doing?
I'm alright, Stu. I'm alright. Finished work, so I'm off tomorrow, but back on Saturday, so I won't be at the game, but I'll watch it with some probably behind the chair, just in case we get beat and don't want another defeat.
And his co-host or co-founder of Not Another Rangers podcast is Davie. Davie, how's things going?
Yes, Stu, not too bad, mate. Hope you're well yourself. Slightly difficult time, shall we say, Rangers just now. So you've certainly brought us on with some interesting talking points to go forward with.
Yes, yeah, looking forward to getting into it a little bit. And introducing as well, so we've got a joint podcast preview here from the Gallant Few. You'll recognise him, I'm sure, if you watch any sort of Rangers podcast. It's David. David, how's things going?
Yeah, fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on. I actually thought when Colin said this afternoon, pizzeria, I thought he was taking the piss out of me after that Italian referee the other night. So that's me. I've been spending my time getting rid of everything Italian. I've put my wife's Fiat 500 away. I've ripped all my posters down of Sophie Loren, and I won't be buying a Lamborghini anytime soon.
Well, listen, it wasn't on purpose. We planned the name way ahead of knowing any sort of nationality of referees. I'm sure we can touch on that a little bit as well. But we'll sort of jump into the season just gone then, instead of the one that we're going to preview. Kerr, you start off with Michael Beale as manager. He does not go too well, if we're honest. It obviously starts as a disaster. I think it was the Killy loss straight away, wasn't there? And it never got much better. A lot of trust was placed in Bill in terms of transfers. He was given a fairly decent budget for a Rangers manager, and he certainly spent that. Cracks started to appear. He goes. Clement comes in. There was talk at the time of other managers. I think Kevin Muscat was a big one, and hindsight, because Kevin Muscat's obviously doing very well now. But where were you sitting when you saw sort of Clement's name come up? Were you happy Rangers were going for a sort of foreign manager that had been tried and tested? He'd won things in Belgium with Bruges, so he certainly come with some pedigree. Was it an exciting managerial appointment for you?
To be honest with you, Stuart, at the time I think I actually spoke with you, I'm not sure, but I didn't really know much about him apart from his time at Bruges, and then they obviously get a sack at Monaco, and apart from that, I knew he played football in England previously. I think it was in Coventry, but I didn't know a lot about his managerial career. I think it was just we were looking for a change for Michael Beale because Hounded went stale. It kind of went toxic at the club, and we were looking for somebody to come in with a bit of just difference to give us some oomph to get the season going. And there's all different names, wasn't there? There was Muscat, there was Clement, there was obviously Lampard. I'm sure other names I've chucked into the thing. When Clement came in, and we thought, right, we need to take him on and trust him, and it started reasonably well, and we got behind him.
Yes, absolutely. And Davey, sort of bringing it to you then, like Kerr says there, he goes on a fantastic run. I think the only points Rangers dropped were away to Aberdeen at first. It's sort of 10 games or whatever it was. Defeating the Old Firm game, but then they pick it back up much for the rest of the season. And then come March, that's when the wheels maybe started to come off a little bit. And we will come into sort of the season ahead now, but have you started to see any sort of, he's not under pressure right now, Clement, but there has been talks, fans are not maybe the happiest they've ever been in a manager of Clement, and it becomes a running theme, I guess, with a lot of Rangers managers. But do you think any sort of cracks were starting to appear last season, or were you more in the boat of he needs his own players, he needs his own squad?
Well, for me, Stu, I think there were sort of slight cracks. How you conduct yourself in the media, I think, is a big thing for a manager of the Old Firm. And for me, when you start shouting about points totals and put excuses forward, then you set yourself up for a slight fall. And towards the end of last season, we've seen that the points total in the head-to-head between him and our rivals, we fell, the wrong side of that. He also spoke about how when pre-season comes, you'll see a different sort of team, more fit. He'll sort the medical department out. And here we are with 4 first-team injuries, 2 weeks into a season. So that is worrying for me. And then when you come out and say that we'll start to hit our best form October, November, December. At Rangers, you have to hit your best form right from the off. You can't be chasing from week 1. We've seen, years gone by previous. Once the chase becomes insurmountable by October, when the pressure's off, you will see the team have their best run of form because that's when they play their best football. The makeup of this squad, for me, is made of players that lack that mentality. And I think that's an issue I'm sure you'll touch on later in the podcast that needs to be addressed. But for me as well with Clement, I think he's tactically naive at times. I think when you're a manager at a football club, you've got to look at the squad that's there first. And until you get the bodies in to play the way you want, you have to shape a squad first and foremost, not to get beat. And as we've seen Rangers, we like to play a high line and we go man for man defensively, far too open, far too many gaps. Teams are exploiting us down the sides. We're susceptible to the ball over the top. At set pieces defensively, we look a shambles and have done. If you've got a run for a Rangers manager which sits at 7 wins in 19 competitive fixtures, I'm sorry, that record doesn't stand up against anybody. And I know a lot of people are talking about a Scottish identity in terms of players. And yes, I subscribe to that. We need to introduce that. But if you look at Rangers' last form of managers, the last permanent Scottish manager was Ali McCoist. So what does that say about us as a football club going forward? I think there's more questions than answers, and that really worries me going forward.
Wow, straight into it. We're only 6 minutes in, Davie, but no. Listen, that's what these previews are for, and sort of pick the bones of the team and the season ahead, and moving on to the season ahead, David. Then Rangers had already, had an obligation with Diamonde from last season, which that becomes permanent for around 4.3 million. Hefty was another one that was linked last season, and then finally seems to have been done over the line, and he joins the club. Cortez as well returns for another loan spell, which again I think maybe has a mandatory clause on this one. Early on, there seemed to be movement, there seemed to be incomings, and it seemed that Clement was making noise about how he's he wanted his own shape, he wanted his own identity on the team. How were you excited early on, and how quickly did that dissipate when you realised that those signings started to slow down?
Well, I think the signings he's brought in are okay, but there's one, if I can just go back to there's one thing that worries me about Clement, and is that just about the Motherwell game last year when the cave-in sort of started, I had actually heard that Clement and Connor Goldson and Tavernier had a big row in the dressing room. And things after that just seem to... And if we look at this season, we've got Hadji, we've got Cantwell sitting in the B team. I'm worried about Clement's man management, to be quite honest with you, because I think that's a thing that he might be lacking. I think, it certainly looks that way from afar. And if you look at the way he sometimes talked about players, and bringing Cantwell off after, what was it, after 45 minutes, was it? And then Wright he brings off. Well, thankfully, it's the fact that he put some hell of him on is probably the worst talking point. But I'm worried. I'm a wee bit worried about Clement's man management. But I think the players that he's brought in, I really think look quite good. I think Diamonde is one of the better players. I have no idea why he took him off. Clement seems to have a thing about taking the best players off. It's not the first time he's done it. He's done it quite regular, and that really worries me about him. And it's so tactically, as Davie says, he's sometimes all over the place.
Yeah, no, I think you can absolutely see that. Kerr, we're going to stick with the signings a little bit because I want to come into some of the players in and your thoughts on those. But just on the outgoings in, John Lundstrom leaves, Ryan Jack leaves, Kemar Roof leaves, Borna Barisic, John McLaughlin, Robbie McCrory, of course, moves over to Kilmarnock, Sam Lammers, and recently Goldson and Cifuentes is out on loan, I think, with an option to buy. Like David said there, Hadji's still on the books. Cantwell apparently wants to leave. He's still on the books. There's plenty of others that seem to be available for transfer if the offers come in. In terms of incoming, it seems a lot matters on what happens on the outgoing side of things. Where are you where's your mindset on terms of how Rangers are, I guess, putting these guys in the shop window? Because it seems that unlike maybe their rivals across the road, that they will continue to play players. They get the best money for players, whereas Rangers just seem to give up on someone. They make them available for transfer. I mean, you've seen Hadji's been bombed out the squad completely. Cantwell apparently wants to transfer, but instead of using him, he's bombed out of the squad completely. I think he's only just returned to training. Rangers are making it obvious that they want these players off the books almost at any means necessary, and that makes it very, very difficult to get any sort of value on them.
Yeah, I mean, you're devaluing them straight away, aren't you? And you're trying to get a player who's not happy, so that plays into it as well. And maybe the teams that want him interested in him don't want to come over because they think, well, why is he fell out with that manager there? I don't want that to happen here. So it can plenty of stuff like that. But I think the players he's brought in, listen, there's a lot of young players he's brought in who he did say are for the future. Barron's probably the only one at the moment that's had the opportunity and stepped up. I think a man's trying to learn how to play football by all accounts. So is a couple of others. Nasala's physicality was lacking when they came in, I heard, so he played last night with the B side. Cortez was unlucky. He was unlucky with injury, but that's just what happens at Rangers Football Club at the moment. People get injured very easily. I mean, there's Redbank get injured as well, but we always knew he was going to bring in less than at left, but it's getting rid of the players. We've struggled for years, Stuart, to get rid of players. You know that yourself. It's like we've had one or two we've sold in the past, Patterson and Bassey, and we rave about it, and we're still raving about it. But there's so many we've let go for nothing over our contracts run down. And that's probably why the others left, because they were all out of contract. If they were still in the contract, they probably wouldn't have left for anything, or if they did, would have paid them off to leave. I think he has got a hard job. Come on, he's trying to do stuff like he's not getting any money. We all know that he's not getting any money. The club's not getting any money to buy players. We know that ourselves. So he's trying to do stuff in a budget, which can be difficult. He might use a loan market near the end of the window. I think he has to, because I don't think his squad's strong enough. One thing that annoys me about Clermont is Hadji and Cantwell are sitting there. Now, I'm not sitting here saying Hadji and Cantwell are the best players we've ever had or are going to improve us 100% better than what we are. But are two guys who've got better quality, and he obviously persisted with this number 10. And Tom Lawrence legs are away. Tom Lawrence isn't mobile enough to play number 10. Dessers gets a lot of stick, and I give him stick, and we all probably do at times. But he's not getting help for the number 10 and Tom Lawrence. So I think he needs somebody more mobile or somebody more creative round about him. Is Hadji the answer? I don't know, but why not try him? He wants to play, but we all know he can't play because his contract is up in money. We can't afford to pay him more dosh. So, and as Cantwell, I mean, I heard the same as David. I heard those arguments in the dressing room last season. I've heard it this season as well. There's a split in the changing room. So if that's the case, Cantwell's probably maybe not want to leave the club per se, but he can't play for that manager. And we've all been in places where we've worked before. We don't like the manager. We don't like certain people and we don't want to work there. But we have to go in because we get paid. These guys have a bit extra leeway because they're still getting paid. They don't have to go in. But if you don't like your boss, you're not going to try 100%. And Cantwell maybe saying, if I go, I go. But if I don't go, he might go before me and I'll just stay. You don't know what's happening behind the scenes because it doesn't look like the team are in. I've got a good morale. I think there's a couple of cliques to the dressing room, which are usually is in the football clubs, but it's not looking good for me. And Clermont, man managing, does stick. I think he's isolated a few players and maybe some of the things he said to them, maybe behind the scenes. But also, one thing before I finish, his treatment of young players is awful. You've got a squad of young players there, young Scottish lads there. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to be really good football players, but how do we know, Stuart, until we give them a chance? I mean, Alec Lowry's been bombed in, bombed out. He scored 2 goals last night and people are saying bring him back in. I mean, I think his time's probably up at Rangers and needs a new challenge, but he's not that guy there. But Bailey Rice could probably get 50, 60 games if he was at somebody else already in the SPL. But at Rangers, he's not getting that chance. So he could be the next player like Billy Gilmour who leaves and says, I want to try it somewhere else. You've got Robbie Fraser, give him a new contract. But instead of bringing him on the other night, it brings on Ben Davies, who's trying to get I'm just kind of stuck at the moment. I don't know. I'm trying to give him so much leeway, Clement, but there's so many other things that's stopped me doing it because there's so many things I don't agree with what he's doing.
Yeah, and I'm going to go one more negative path with you, Davey, and then I promise I'm going to try and find a positive for David to speak about. But in terms of Kerr mentioned it there with the injuries, Cortez, a bit unlucky, you could say, but, you know, Rascan's already out, injured. Cortez was then injured, which a minimum of 5 weeks, but in football, that probably means it's going to be a little bit more, plus the time to come back into the team. We're recording this the Thursday after Rangers have played on the Champions League on Tuesday. Ridvan is now injured, and that, I mean, when you see someone pull up with their thigh, that never really seems or spells good news. So there's more injury worries. There were a lot of injury problems last season, way too many, and I know Motherwell, Kettlewell's in the media saying about how bad their injury crisis is. I'm not sure if they're sharing medical advice with Rangers at the moment, but where are you sitting in terms of, you know, the injury problems that Rangers have had and been plagued with for at least 2 seasons now, and how they resolve that? Can it all be down to bad luck, or do you think this is maybe a little bit of bad luck, but maybe sprinkled in with some poor sports scientists or poor medical department facilities? What is the issue with Rangers?
Well, I mean, the person who is the club doctor, Dr. Mark Waller, was brought in by Stephen Gerrard, and he obviously heralded him for his appointment, and he was brought back to the club under Michael Beale. But regardless of who the club doctor's been, the injury record has been absolutely horrendous. And for me, if you look at it, obviously we have 4 players out just now. Obviously, Leon Balogun is struggling with an injury at the moment, and at his age, at 36, when he's asked to play at this level of intensity, and yes, he is a strong runner in recovery, but being at that age, you know, and doing that on a regular basis, the two don't marry. I think it's a concern over Ridvan Yilmaz as well. He seems to have a run of 3 or 4 games, and then he goes missing for 5 or 6. So there's no reliability there. And as a club, you've got to look at that. And as a medical department, you've got to look at that. And if the players can't do it for you on a consistent basis, maybe look to move them on. You know, get in touch with their agents and try and do, you know, deals. Because if they can't play week in, week out for Rangers, you know, they're no good to the club. There's a guy there as well, Dujon Sterling. And I don't know if it's the manager who is, you know, doesn't have trust in him to play a natural position, or whether the medical department don't think, you know, he can play 90 minutes every game. But when he is in the team, especially in a central position, Rangers look a better side, you know, especially off the ball. So it's a concern for me. I think when you start saying that, you know, the medical department told me that, you know, Václav Černý could only play, you know, 45 to 75 minutes. So I decided to bring him on at half time. But surely when you've seen his creativity against Motherwell as a manager, and I know David mentioned, you know, man management earlier on, but it's got to be squad management as well that comes under question with Clement, because if you've got a player there who's on a runny form, he set up the equaliser last week. He had a terrific performance against Motherwell in the 55 minutes he played. He took his goal really well. Then you have to start him, because that's a must-win game. You know, bringing him on when it's nothing each in the tie and you're potentially chasing it, you know, 10, 15 minutes into the second half when you get that red card. To me, that's poor squad management from Clement. And I don't know, you know, he obviously relies on data. It's a data-led club in terms of squad selection and injuries. But for me, I don't think that works. I subscribe to the fact that if you're a manager and you have a conversation with a player, you can look them in the eye and they can tell you if they're ready. And I think that's far too lost. Too many clubs are data-led these days. And for a club like Rangers, I don't think that works.
No, I think most people would agree there, especially when it's it's not working on the pitch. It makes everything 10 times worse. It highlights everything a lot more. David, I promised a bit of positivity, so we're going to try it. Conor Barron's come in from Aberdeen, Scotland, under 21 international. And for all, the fans maybe wondering where the likes of Bailey Rice and Alex Lowry, where their chances are going to be in the first team, one man that he has seemingly relied on, and whether that's because he has to because of the lack of squad depth, Conor Barron is someone that seems to have gone straight in the team. Clement's already said he's the future of the midfield. He's someone they want to sort of not build the team around, but build as part of the team around the real quality that they can and do possess currently. He has been probably man of the match in maybe two, possibly all three of the games he's played in for Rangers, or four, sorry. How are you seeing Conor Barron so far? I mean, Davey mentioned it earlier about having a Scottish identity, and it is something that Rangers maybe haven't really had in the middle since Barry Ferguson. And I'm not comparing them, but I'm just saying that having that quality Scottish midfielder is so important. And I think someone like Conor Barron, from what I've seen of him so far, he's all action. He's he wants to be involved. He wants to break up the play, but he's also good on the ball. And even within 4 games, I think him and Diamande are actually starting to strike up a nice little partnership in there, and they're starting to understand each other a lot more. And it's maybe one of the few positives that Rangers do have right now.
Yeah, well, I was going to say he was a steal, but we're not allowed to mention steal, are we? So I think Conor Barron's been absolutely brilliant since he came in. I think the player actually that I would more like him to is Alec McDonald, as we've been talking about. I think that was more, he's the sort of a gritty, get into everybody's face type of player, and I think that's what Barron is as well. And definitely Diamande. Well, I'm a big Diamande fan. I think he's going to be a great player for us. So I think I think Barron has got a good future in it. I think the way we're sort of going to go is we'll probably keep him for a couple of years, and then if we're going to get into this buying selling players on, then we'll give him 2, maybe 4, at least 21, so maybe 4 years, and then sell him on. But I think we'll get a lot of cash back for him. So I think I hope he keeps going the way he is. I prefer him a wee bit more advanced though. I don't really like him in that defensive role. I would prefer him and Diamande and bring in. I don't know whether Raskin is that man to bring in and play behind him. I think that would be a way to go. But Raskin he started off really good and then sort of died away. But I thought at the start of this season he was starting to get back into some form again. Or we need to bring in another midfielder, like Clement says that we need another midfielder. We certainly don't need John Lundstrom, as some people are saying, but we need a player that's maybe like John Lundstrom and then better.
Yep, can't argue with that. Kerr, last sort of point on the transfers. We're not going to go through player by player, but one I do want to sort of touch on is Hamza Igamane. Apologies if I've butchered the pronunciation of that, but he comes in for a reported 1.7 million from Morocco. Seems to have a lot of potential. Seems to be highly rated. Rumours as soon as he come in that he was out for 4 months. That seems to have had cold water poured on it, and he just wasn't up to speed. Some strange comments from Clement, maybe touching on what Davey said about his presses, that he's doing different things with the ball, and I didn't really understand what that meant. But do you think it's a necessity for Rangers? They want to build this player trader model. They want to bring in players that have the potential, that can eventually integrate into the squad and contribute, and then move on for money. But when, like yourself said, the money is very tight at a club, and there's clearly a need for more players to come in to if Rangers have any hope this season of A, challenging the title, which is probably a long shot, but B, cementing that second place as well. Do you find it a bit strange that they were willing to fork out, as it's rumoured, 1.7 million on a player that apparently is quite far away from the first team? Or are you expecting him to be used once he's up and ready this season?
That's as good a guess as anybody. Will he be used? I've not got a clue about that one, Stuart. But listen, 1.7 million is a lot of money when you're not got any. especially a club like ourselves. You've not got a lot of money to spread about it now. We spent it in other ways, the stadium building, giving players an extra wee bit of money to leave and stuff like that. So we've not got a lot to spend. So that's a lot of money on somebody who's got potential. I can see what they're trying to do in the player trading model. I know John Bennett mentioned it as well, but there's times and there's places for doing this stuff. And this season, the start of the season wasn't that time. The way last season ended. So you had to bring in somebody with a bit more, especially players with let go experience. I'm not saying somebody with a bit more experience, but had to box cover with his money. And he's not done that for me. Now, you spoke about a Scottish identity. Look, McCowan's sitting there for 500 grand for Dundee. You walk into a Rangers setup and you still get money left, and his wages wouldn't be too high. And that's the type of players we need to go for. We need to get players to get this club start moving forward. We can't keep going and buying guys like we've never heard of, like maybe Agaman or Agamani. You say maybe 10 years' time or 5 years' time, he could be a world beater. We don't know that. But we've not got that time to sit and wait. If you finish second in Scotland, it's failure. And that's the end of the story. And we're out of Europe, we were out of Champions League, we're in the Europa League. But he loses on Saturday. People are going to start asking questions if they're not already. So I think he had to box cover. The problem is, Stuart, with the club is, from top to bottom, it's not great. It's not run properly. There's no CEO in place. There's no director of football. We've got Coppin, who's a scout, basically, and that's it. So nobody knows what's happening at the club. They've not got anybody to try and sell players. And you can only sell players. You hear everybody saying, we need to get rid of A, we need to get rid of B. You can only get rid of these guys if people are actually wanting to buy them. If nobody's interested, they stay where they are. You just can't say to somebody off you pop unless you're going to get money for them, unless rumours are being you pay them off, and that's wasting more of your money you're trying to bring players in me. So the club is a shambles. Yeah, Clement has got a lot of blame, but he's not getting the majority of the blame. A lot of that blame's on the club themselves. We've no moving forward as a club. And this player taking things great. You mentioned Barron, but David mentioned bringing in a midfielder. As a guy sitting in the B team, Bailey Rice, give him a run of games. If he's not good enough, then we can say, right, go back to the B team. But how do we know if these guys are not good enough until we give them a game? Give them 5-10 games. Why not? Previous managers have done it with players. You mentioned Barry Ferguson. That happened to him. Sometimes in the right place at the right time. Give him a shot. What's he got? What have we got to lose? Because at this moment in time, we're playing a number 10 who can't run. And Diamandi and Barron are trying to cover that much space. They're struggling. So I don't give Bailey Rice a go. By all accounts, everybody says he was a better prospect than Lennon Miller. And look how good Lennon Miller is. I mean, if he signed him, people want him to start. So they're the same age. So use Bailey Rice and keep that money for a midfielder. And if you've got any, and go and get somebody else. You need like a right back, a left back, another striker. But we have to box cover, and that's what the club aren't doing at the moment at all.
Yep, fair points. And Davey, I mean, moving on, I want to touch a little bit on the sort of news that broke late last night or early this morning. We'll come on to that. First up, we'll lead into it with the stadium issue in the first place. Rangers obviously plying their trade at Hampden for, the near future, if all delivery dates are met, that we expect Rangers back in a few months' time or a couple of months' time. How big of an impact is that going to have, do you think, on the team? Because, you look at social media and a lot of fans that, it wasn't a sellout at the Dynamo Kiev game for Hampden, even if it was. We've seen some special nights at Hampden for the national team and for cup finals, but it doesn't hold the same atmosphere as an Ibrox on a European night, which, can become the 12th man. It can, I don't want to say influence referees, but it might make those decisions a little bit harder that he clearly got wrong. It can lead the team on. It can strike fear into the opposition. It's such a big strength for Rangers playing at Ibrox in a European game. And by all means, I mean, if they, I'm not sure if it's they start the European campaign at Hampden, it has to be finished at Hampden, or if it's just the competition. So I'm not sure if they can play a Europa League game at Ibrox as long as it's the first one. I'd have to find out. But at the moment, it's looking like all European games are going to be at Hampden Park. How, with everything else going on off the pitch, how big of an impact do you think that's having as well?
Yeah, it's a massive impact, Stu. I think if you take Hampden, for example, it's built for international football. Club football's different. The atmosphere in club football's different. It's more carnival at international football. Both, as you've seen at the Euros, both sets of fans back their team in terms of they're all going there, having a laugh, having a beer, and everybody's just up for it. They're all singing the same songs. When it comes to club football, it's more intense. You're that closer to the pitch. I think you might subscribe to the fact that you care more about club football. I certainly do. I care more about my club. And that's not to decry international football. I just think it means more. That's why it gets more in terms of broadcast rights across the spectrum. However, I don't put this at Clement's door. This is obviously bad boardroom dealings. I do think we're doing it for the right reasons. Disabled fans, should be hosted in a proper section of the stadium with, proper means of getting in and out safely and, being comfortable while they're there. And I support any, greater wheelchair access for anybody at football. And that goes for home and away fans across the board in Scottish football. It's all something that we could do, more of. However, the board knew when the season finished, all the materials should have been here for the moment that the season finished for the work to start. It wasn't, it's all come over in 3 different shipments, and the shipments were delayed. There was no contingency plan. So the way I look at it, if you're running a business, if one contractor fails you, then you've got to have a backup. And surely you find, the person that, you first set up the contract with and you go to the secondary supplier. However, we haven't done that, and it's handicapping us. Philip Clement spoke last year in regards to, synergy. He wanted to build that synergy. That'll dissipate the longer that we're at Hampden. That goes against them. If you're at your home stadium, everyone's more up for it. It's a more raucous atmosphere for the opposition to face. At Hampden, I don't think the view is good from most places in Hampden, and I think that impacts. If you've paid for a season ticket, and let's not forget, the Rangers season ticket is the most expensive in certain parts of the stadium than any other in Scottish football, and you're subscribing your fan base to this, it's completely unacceptable. The board have to be accountable for that. And unfortunately, too many times they disappear and they seem to speak to the club in 2.5-year spells. And unfortunately, when they do address the fan base, it's always platitudes and self-made questions so that they're answering their own questions. And that is not good enough. And the longer this maintains over the season, I think it's a complete hindrance to the squad, the playing staff and the fan base. And I don't see it getting any better.
No. Well, I mean, strong words there. David, staying with the stadium issues, but maybe moving slightly on, it did seem to break late last night, and we got more on it early this morning, that Celtic had come out and said that there would be no away fans or Rangers fans in the first Old Firm fixture after the SPFL or the SFA and everyone had reached an agreement at the end of last season. I think it was for 5% away fans. It seemed that these long-running issues were maybe getting resolved, and then Celtic have said that Rangers have not taken the steps to install the safety netting that's been agreed, whereas they've already done it. It needs to go through planning permissions and councils, and that part. I'm not saying it's true that Rangers haven't applied, or what is true is that it does take time to get planning permission. It does take time for councils to approve planning permission. However, Rangers have then come out and tit for tat have said that's not the case. That Rangers are putting the measures in place. There would be no problem by the time the Old Firm fixture rolled around in 5 months' time at Ibrox, is where they're hoping it would be, of course. Where do you see this sort of attendance row ending? Because you see some people on social media think that Celtic are using it as an excuse because they want the full allocation back. You see others think that with everything going on at Rangers at the moment, they maybe couldn't ensure the safety, or they can't ensure that they'll be back at Ibrox by that time. And it's a mess, if we're honest. But where are you sort of sitting on it? It's very hard to know who to believe.
Well, I think the board are totally to blame. I think it was Davie said that steel should have been there, ready to start as soon as the last game. The workers should have been in there. But I think the Celtic stopping us going to Parkhead, I think it's doing us a favour, to be quite honest with you. I think a lot of people weren't going to go anyway. And although, funnily enough, I'm back home for the 30th, so I would have quite liked to get a ticket for it, but obviously I can't now. So I don't know. I'm actually quite happy if there's no Celtic supporters at Ibrox. So I suppose that means that I'm also happy that there's no Rangers supporters at Parkhead. But I just find it really difficult for boys and men and women that have got a season ticket for the whole year round. When Celtic come, they get told, sorry, you can't go to that game. And I think that's really harsh. So I'm sort of stuck with that thought as well. But I really think, I very much doubt we'll be back at Ibrox shortly. I think this is going to drag on and drag on, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are probably in the same way of thinking. If I'm completely honest, everyone certainly on social media believe that it's going to be a bit of a while before Rangers get back to Ibrox. Finishing up then, Kerr, we'll go round the board and we'll ask a couple of questions each. In terms of the window coming to a close, we're sort of 15, 16 days away from the end of the transfer window. What do you think Rangers need, and what do you think you'll get between now and the end of the window?
What do we need? We've not got that long left. We need. we need. I would probably say we still need about 6 players, but I know we're not going to get 6 players. I know that's kind of fantasy. I think we need another striker brought in. Honestly, do. I mean, Dessers is Dessers. He can do what he does, but I think if he leads the line a full season, I think we're going to struggle. Not just with him, but I think he will struggle. You've seen it the other night, he was getting frustrated. And on the other night, just before I go ahead and say my other stuff, the atmosphere the other night was very poor for a Champions League qualifier. It's probably the worst I felt it. It was just like a normal run-of-the-mill game. Now, usually when you go to a European game, the stadium's buzzing, everybody's up for it. You see Ibrox are close to their park, but everybody's wanting to get through to the next round. But it wasn't there at Hampden. And it was dead quiet, and it only started getting more intense when Kiev scored for about 5-10 minutes after that, because everybody started singing, wanting the players to try and fight for an equaliser. But before that, a part of the Union Bears making a bit of noise, atmosphere was dead. There were all empty seats, and that was seats that has probably been paid for, but folk just don't want to go. Because I know a lot of folk myself that don't want to go just because it's Hampden, but they'll buy their tickets, but they just won't go. So the atmosphere was poor, so I don't think that helps us, but it's not the main reason. But on Clement, I think Clement's going to have to, like I said earlier, he's going to have to use the money if he's got any to see who he needs the most. He's going to obviously persist with Tavernier, and by all accounts, he's injured. So we've heard, I don't know if he is, but he's playing like he's injured. But no real blames on Tavernier. I know Tavernier's not your best bud at the moment either, Stuart, but I think Clement will persist with him. I think he will, but that will cause issues, because I thought the other night Kiev went by him far too easy. But he's not the only player that's done that. So I think we need definitely a striker. And I'll probably say a midfielder, just because he won't use any youth players. We've got Cole McKinnon and Bailey Rice who could be using, but he won't use them, which is a shame, because there's 2 guys there who's got ability, and if you give them a chance, they could prove you wrong and save us a bit of money, which we could do with doing saving, but he won't use them either. So I think he may bring in one more permanent signing, but I think he's going to have to use a loan market, which is a thing. It can work for you, but can also work against you. But will any players go? I don't know. I think it could come to last maybe 48, 24 hours, and we could just be forcing players away, like Hadji and Campbell, just to get them off the books. And that's not a way a football club should be working either, especially a club the size of Rangers.
Can I put in a proposition, Stuart? Just to make a talking point. What about if bringing a centre half? I think we need a centre half anyway. And what about moving proper forward into the defensive midfield role?
What's your thoughts on that then, Davie?
I'm going to say no. I don't like putting square pegs in round holes. The boy, as a centre half, has always played centre half, and I know it was said that he looks comfortable on the ball, but I've only seen him play sort of 4 or 5 yard passes. So you know, just now, and we need to try and move away from that. That was John Lundstrom's problem. You know, passing the ball between the back 3 and the goalkeeper, and it was all neat and tidy side to side. Rangers need something better than that. We need to impose ourselves on the opposition. I think Connor Barron's tenacity allows you to do that, but you've got to have, for me, a 6 behind him and a solid 6, a guy that's in the mould of sort of a Singari who was at PSV, in that PSV team before he got his move to Nottingham Forest. And then that would also allow Diamandi to go higher. And that's where I think he'll influence the game. I would rather that we played with a 6 and sort of 2 advanced 8s and press the opposition, because for what we did see during, the Kiev game, although we were relatively poor for the majority of it, when we pressed the opposition, that's when we played our best stuff. And far too often we sit off and allow the opposition to impose themselves on us, and that's where they find the gaps. I think, in all honesty, I've got a much bigger shopping list than Kerr, to be perfectly frank with you. I'm looking for a centre-half and a commanding centre-half. I think if Proper's the guy he's brought in to play, to me, he's not a dominant centre-half. We need a very physical, attack the ball at all costs, robust centre-half with recovery pace to play beside him, almost in the mould of a young Majid Bagheera to play beside him, and Proper would be the Davie Weir type in that respect. I think we need a central 6, as I've already alluded to. Also think we need cover at right back, and depending on the Ridvan situation, we might need cover at left back, but I do allude to the fact that Robbie Fraser, if we've signed a contract extension, then there is scope to introduce him. I think we need a winger on each side. Czerny's not our player, he's a lone player, so we need cover for him on the right-hand side. Scott Wright has proved that he cannot play as a winger. I don't know what Scott Wright's natural position is, and he's been here for 3.5 seasons. He comes in and flatters to deceive at times, as we've seen in his last 2 fixtures. He's been subbed after 45 minutes. On the left-hand side, we've got Cortez, who's injured, and we've got Rabi Matondo. But as we've seen recently, he would rather play Yefti in front of Rabi Matondo at the moment. So what does that say? If you're a left winger and that's your natural position, your manager doesn't fancy you. And again, we can't seem to get Danilo up to speed or him involved. We've had the issues that you have already spoke at length about with Egamani. Dessers, as we've seen as well, you can't rely on him. Rangers need a striker in the mould of a young Alfredo Morelos, someone that can hold the ball up, bring your midfield up 10, 15 yards higher on the pitch so you can play passes in and around the opposition penalty box. For me, we don't have that option. Dessers, just likes to play on the shoulders of defenders and look for that pass to come through. He doesn't have much else in his game for me. Danilo, again, I'm not sure what type of striker he is. If he is a penalty box striker, then for me, he has to get up to fitness. But again, he's not going to be an option for you to hold the ball up. He's going to look to play in behind and stretch the opposition. And again, the question marks over Egamani. So for me, massive surgery is needed. But unfortunately, we've got too much deadwood there to shift out. And we'll need to shift out a good chunk of that before we can bring anybody in.
Wow, certainly. I mean, it was more than I was expecting you to ask for, but listen, it's fair enough. We're slightly running out of time here. I should have known because, listen, as soon as I bring Rangers fans on, there's a lot to unpack for the season ahead. So, David, I'll move on to the next question. Where do you think Rangers are going to finish in each of the 4 competitions? So, the runs in the Scottish and League Cup, how far they go in Europe, and league position?
I think we'll end up 20 points in front of Aberdeen anyway. So I'll get that one out of the road first of all. Even although the Aberdeen boy thinks he'll be fighting for second place, I very much doubt that. But as the team stands at this moment, I don't know whether we'll put in a big challenge for the league. I hope we do. I hope that Celtic don't strengthen much more than they've done just now. They had that boy from Norwich. They had him there last year. And I seen the last game of the season, our midfield was on top of their midfield. So I'm actually, if we could add in a good midfielder to it, I actually think our midfield could become better than their midfield. And we need a striker, like Davie said. We really need a striker. That's a striker that gets one chance and takes one chance and scores one chance. There's no striker in the world that can do that, but you do have strikers that score in important minutes, and that's what we need. And Ally McCoist missed thousands of chances, but he always come up with big goals, and that's, I suppose Dessers does as well, but you just know that in the game we need one goal. You know he's not going to get us up there. And plus the fact that, like Davie says, we need somebody to hold the ball up. Yeah, that's it. I would quite like to see somebody that's big and good with the head as well. Derek Johnson type. That's that I think that was special with Czerny. And I mean, we talked about Gifty. We talked about him. I mean, I think he's been one of the best players since when he came on in the last 2 games. And he's got some amount. He can jump. I'll tell you that for a ball. I mean, he should never have been sent off because he just jumped far higher than the other player. No, I think I've sort of lost what the original question was, but I think that we will end up second in the league. I think we will have a good cup. I'm going to give us the Scottish Cup. I think we'll get the Scottish Cup, and I think we'll probably get to the final of the League Cup, and whether we win it or not, it depends on whether we strengthen.
There you go. Kerr, I will give you a quick prediction as well. I know it's hard. I was a bit unfair on David there because it's hard to predict cup runs, isn't it? Do you think, in terms of strengthening, there's any amount of strengthening Rangers can do before the end of the window that will put them in a position to challenge for the title this season?
No, nothing. Basically nothing. I don't think they've got the funds. I don't think we'll bring in the right players because I don't think we'll be looking at the right players. And I think a lot of players we were looking at previously, we couldn't get their way. And the market we're working in, Stuart, we're going to be left with ones that players that nobody really wants. So we're going to have to take a chance on some guys. That might not work out. So that's why I'm always advocate for using your own guys, like the youth system. So I don't think we'll be challenging for the league. I think we will be in for a fight for second place, I have to say. I don't think we'll be clear second this year. I think we will struggle because I don't think that squad is strong enough. I think other teams in the league have strengthened better than we have. And I think the way we play, we're always open. People can open us up very easily. You've seen it last season. You've seen it already this season. So it depends who he brings in between now and the window shuts. As for the cup ties, anything can happen in cup competitions. We could be lucky and win one, or we could get knocked out both. We'll see on Saturday, won't we? And Europe, I just think we have to go as far as we can for financial reasons. But I don't think we'll do anything in Europe like we've done previous seasons because I don't think the squad again is good enough. I don't think the talent's there. I don't think the heart's there. And it all comes back to my point. I don't think the manager's there.
Well, there we go. Straight from the horse's mouth of the Rangers fans of the Gallant Few and Not Another Rangers podcast. We will end it there. We've run slightly over our usual period, but we were trying something different anyway, bringing a few more guys on from the podcast. We've got other teams coming on. I won't mention them to these boys in case they never talk to me again. But thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much to Scott, Davie and David. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you guys on. And we will be back very, very shortly, probably with a League Cup roundup. But if not, then we've got another View from the Stands dropping next week as well. So we'll catch you all very soon.